Hello, Canada and baseball fans in the United States and Newfoundland. Welcome to the first episode of Bat Flips and Maple Dips, the baseball podcast that comes to you from the land of universal healthcare and excessive apologies, Canada. So I'm Patrick Marsh.
I'm Justin Anderson.
I am Clayton Croker.
This week we are starting off with a pretty simple topic. The question is it time for the Toronto Blue Jays to call it a season and blow it up? Meaning, is it time to trade everybody, fire everybody else, and bring up all of our prospects to get some experience? Before we get into the main topic, let's just introduce ourselves a little bit, I guess.
Hey, I'm Justin, living in Saskatoon. Big baseball guy. I've been an umpire for 13 years. Huge Jays fan. Favorite player is old Doc Halladay. R.I.P.
R.I.P.
Favorite current guy, definitely old Aaron Sanchez. Hopefully he can get his stuff together because he's a hell of a pitcher. Outside of that, personal life, dabble in a bit of very, very amateur guitar playing.
Keyword very.
Very, very amateur. Pretty big into the Xbox. Rocket League, definitely the go-to game right now. Outside of that, I'm just a huge movie and music buff and work at the radio station here with Clayton. And I'm a salesperson, so I'm not as cool as the on-air guy over here. But
he's the dark side. That's what we like to call
are
him.
the money makers. I'm the reason that Clayton gets paid, so I have that on him.
If you worked a little harder, I'd get paid a little bit more. So I'd appreciate it if you could just do that. I'm Clayton Croker. I've been a on-air radio host for 8 years. My first job was working the midnight to 6 a.m. shift on a AM country radio station in Yorkton, Saskatchewan.
So very high listenership.
Very high listeners. I think I had 4 listeners my first shift or something like that. But the morning show host at 96.3 Cruise FM here in Saskatoon. Favorite baseball team, obviously the Jays. Go Jays go. Second favorite team, the Buffalo Bisons. Third favorite team, New Hampshire Fisher Cats. Big Jays fan. Favorite baseball player of all time, it's got to be Robbie Alomar. Least favorite baseball player of all time, Brett Laurie, a.k.a. Cement Head.
Oh.
Could not stand Brett Laurie, but that's a tale for another day. Favorite player right now? I still got to say Josh. I'm still just a huge Josh Donaldson guy.
Big JD guy, hey?
I really hope he doesn't get traded. We'll talk about that a bit more.
Calves.
But I played baseball my whole life. Played midget AAA here in Saskatoon, and baseball's kind of in my blood. So.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm Patrick Marsh. I am in Halifax, Nova Scotia, so I'm not living it up in the bustling metropolis of Saskatoon.
That it is.
Instead, I'm hanging out on the East Coast. Favorite team are the Toronto Blue Jays. What a surprise. And favorite player of all time is kind of a hard question because I have a lot of favorite players who weren't Toronto Blue Jays. Like, I loved watching Greg Maddux and Tom Glavine growing up.
Who didn't?
Well, yeah, really, though. We can probably spend 10 episodes just talking about that Atlanta pitching staff from the 90s. Good. But I digress. Favorite Jay was probably Roy Halladay.
R.I.P.
R.I.P.
Yeah, I did like Carlos Delgado way back in the day. Watching him,
that guy 4 home runs in a game.
He was the guy.
My dude.
Watching him crush homers was sweet.
Yep.
I do miss him. Least favorite player of all time? Oh, I don't know.
Josh Towers.
Probably. No, I'm trying to think of what player let us down the most.
Josh Towers.
No, wait.
Like,
let me go back. Ricky Romero.
Oh, yeah.
Romero? That's a pretty epic disappointment.
Change up for days, though.
Oh, yeah. That only gets you so far.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Ricky Romero. There's a lot of residual disappointment there.
Yeah, are we still paying that guy? We must be.
Yeah, we are.
Oh my goodness.
There's a few years where it seems like every pitching prospect we had came in, was super hot, and then just turned into an epic fail.
Kyle Drabeck. We can go on and on and on.
Kyle who?
Kyle who? Exactly.
Didn't we get him for Roy Halladay?
Scene?
Hey, Gus, isn't he from Colombia or Venezuela? One of the two, somewhere down there.
Somewhere.
Colombian drug lord. Yeah, that guy was awesome. Big lefty. He had the cool glasses. I always wanted those when I was a kid.
Oh yeah,
man. MVP baseball 2005. He was starting in AAA. I'd always bring him up.
I remember that.
Always.
Yeah, and he didn't have a picture either. He was one of the
He was
guys
one
that
of
just
those,
had a
like,
blank face.
Blockheads. Yeah.
I hated that.
That was great.
All right, let's get into the draft. Justin, go.
Okay, so as you may know, the draft started yesterday. It's the annual June prospect draft. Fun times. So the Jays had the 12th pick this year, highest pick they've had since 2014. Took a shortstop. A lot of people were kind of surprised with the pick. Jordan Groshans from Magnolia High School in Texas. So not only did they not take a pitcher, as is tradition with the Jays, they all took a shortstop from high school. The kid's got a great bat. They say he has one of the a plus power number, which is one of the best in the draft.
Mm-hmm.
He's a middle of the order guy. They project him to be. So I've seen comparisons offensively to Troy Tulowitzki with that kind of prowess. Defensively, he's still developing. Obviously, he's 18 years old, so they haven't figured out quite if he's going to stay at short. He's got a good arm, though. He's pitched in high school, as most shortstops do, it seems. So he has got good potential to at least stick at second base, if not short. Interesting pick, though, with the high school side of things. But all in all, they had him ranked around the 20s, so the Jays took him a little bit earlier than the scouts had him ranked. But I'm not a huge hater of the pick. I think it's pretty good. We can always, you never have too many shortstops in your system. Lick took Logan Warmouth last year, and he's already lighting it up with Dunedin, so we can't go wrong there. Second pick we took 52nd overall was son of good old Jeff Conine, Griffin, from Marcus Stroman's alma mater, Duke. He's an outfielder. Nice. He hits for average and power, and one of the top power hitters in the draft. They've got power to all fields. So that's always a good sign at the prospect that he's not just pull happy. Projected as a right fielder, which you can never have too many of them when you're a Blue Jays team. You seem to struggle for corner outfielders every year.
Yeah.
Next up was Adam Kloffenstein, who is Jordan Groshans' teammate at Magnolia High School in Texas. So they kind of went a little bit off the board with this guy. He was ranked, they took him 88th, and he was ranked about 130th. So it kind of went a little bit. I'm not sure. Maybe they talked to Jordan, and Jordan said, "Hey, you got to take my boy here."
Yeah.
But he's got a low 90s heavy sinker, kind of like an Aaron Sanchez, but he touches 96 on the four seam. There's a curve, a cutter, and a change. So he's got 5 pitches that he's throwing already, and as an 18-year-old, so bodes well if he can at least harness those. And then the last guy I'll touch on was Sean Weimer, another right-handed pitcher from TCU. It's a university in Texas. Another guy with a sinker baller, which seems like kind of be the norm these days. Everyone's kind of throwing a good sinker. He's around 89 to 92 with that. Touches 95 on the four-seamer with a great curveball, a mediocre slider, and a solid changeup that he's throwing for strikes already. So that's a good sign. They've picked 9 guys. I'm only going to touch on those 4. Those are the big ones so far that have a lot of info. It's tough to find info on these other kind of fringe prospects that go past the 4th round. When there's 40 rounds in a draft, you're scraping the bottom of the barrel pretty quick. So.
I was worried you were going to go through pick by pick by pick, and I was like, "This is the last draft you should do that in, Justin."
I know. I mean, we could talk about hockey and how really the first 2 rounds are the only ones we're talking about, and they only have 7 in total. And we got 40 rounds in baseball, which is ridiculous. Then you have all those compensatory picks for free agent signings, and
it's a joke. The MLB draft is a little bit of a joke.
You think about Kevin Pillar, who went pretty late.
Exactly.
And that's really the only guy I know who's a late round draft pick who's blossomed.
Yeah. I'll ask Patrick this. Patrick, what do you think about us taking 2 positional players early in the draft when pitching prospects? I mean, yes, there are a ton of them. The MLB draft has way more pitchers and positional players. But do you like us taking positional players in the first round as opposed to the second and third rounds?
I like the shortstop pick.
Groshans, yeah.
And I'll get into that in a second. I don't understand really the outfield pick at all. I don't know very much, admittedly, about Griffin Conine.
Yeah.
But I was kind of thinking that if we weren't going to use our first round pick for a pitcher, that we definitely should be doing it in the second round. And the fact that we waited another round before we got Adam Kloffenstein.
Yeah, that's a great name. I hope it makes it on his jersey because that's going to wrap right around.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a little bit confused about that. But the thing that I thought was a bit surprising was that Jordan Groshans, he signed right away.
Yeah.
He had initially been committing to Kansas.
Yeah.
Because his brother actually goes to Kansas right now.
Yeah, they were going to live
he?
together. That was the big thing, yeah.
I was very surprised to see that he opted to sign with the Jays instead of going to to college, but I guess he had signed for like $4 million or something
That's
like
what that pick's valued at. Yeah, 4.7, I believe.
Yeah, it was big money, so
It's tough for
even
an
if
18-year-old kid to say no to 4.7 million.
Exactly.
oh yeah, and the thing is that the chance to actually get to play Major League Baseball, the fact that he is a first round pick, even though the MLB draft is usually more of a crapshoot than the other drafts in the major sports
Yeah.
in North America, just the fact that he was their first round pick and he was taken, what was it, like 10 or 12 spots above where he was expected to go,
Yeah, it was about
shows that there's a lot of faith there. But the other thing is that, from what I was reading, the scuttlebutt on Reddit was that Groshans is probably going to end up at third base.
Yeah, which is
Why?
interesting. But
Yeah.
it's tough to say. I mean, the kid's 18. He's probably looking at like he's like the fifth or sixth, maybe even seventh shortstop in our organization right now, behind all these guys that we have currently. So I mean, by the time he's ready for the bigs, he does take a shortstop. Who knows? Maybe the circumstances change in the next couple of years and we need somebody there.
Well, I don't know if you guys know this, but we have a young 19-year-old third baseman in the minors. He's this little-known guy.
Yeah.
He's called Vladimir Guerrero Jr. And why are we going to move an 18-year-old shortstop to third base when, yeah, sure, Vladdy's defensive skills at third base, they sound like they're subpar because he's a little bit of a big boy. I can't see him going down and,
thick.
Sticking grounders and stuff like that. But I don't think we should move him to third, keep him at short. If he's as good as he is at hitting, and we can have Vladdy Jr. and this guy playing shortstop, I mean, that's a pretty good young punch to have.
Don't forget about the sick guy with the flow, Bo Bichette.
Bo Bichette, of course.
Oh,
Yeah,
Boba
we've got a dearth of infielders
Man,
already
it's
in the
crazy.
system that
You
are
could talk about them
very
all day.
exciting, between Biggio, Bichette, and then you've got Guerrero on the corner.
Gurriel Jr.
There's so much. Yeah, there's so many.
Got a lot, but that's a
guys
position that you always seem to be able to move in trades. Like teams are always looking for middle infielders that can handle the bat, and frankly, every one of ours in our system can do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something that we have to, I guess, value highly, is the fact that the Jays were willing to take this guy in the first round ahead of where he was projected. And then he signed right away. It kind of makes me wonder if he would have signed right away if he was drafted by a different team. I mean, we can speculate all we want, but maybe he was looking forward to having a chance to play with some of the guys that we've drafted. I mean, he fits into our age range of where we're kind of projecting to be competitive again in a couple of years. And as a 20-year-old kid, he might fit into that picture. Maybe that's what kind of excited him.
Maybe he's seen guys like Vladdy who have had success as an 18, 19-year-old kid. Guys like Bryce Harper who don't really, they don't need time to develop.
Some guy named Mike Trout.
Exactly. He's probably seen all these young guys who are like, you know what, I can do that. Did you guys see the story about Kyler Murray?
Yeah, I did. Crazy.
So the Oakland A's take him with the 9th overall pick. Mm-hmm. He is the starting quarterback for the Oklahoma Sooners.
Yeah.
Oakland offers him $4.7 million to go play in their minor league system. Or do you play for Oklahoma?
Football.
Like, Oklahoma could win the national championship this year. He is a Heisman candidate. What would you do, Patrick? Would you take the $4.7 million and, grind away in the minors? Or would you play that 1 year of Oklahoma football and hope to maybe get back to the Oakland farm system?
Oh, I would go straight to MLB.
Yeah.
If playing college ball, you're going to be more at risk for, a serious career-ending injury.
Mm-hmm.
I just think it'd be a safer bet for him to just jump right into the system in Oakland. And I mean, Oakland, I don't know too much about them, but I don't think that they're exactly competitive at this time, and probably won't be competitive next year either, unless something happens.
Yeah,
so I mean, he has to look at the system and say, I have a really, really strong opportunity here to jump into an organization and immediately be one of their higher touted prospects. Why would I go bang my head on the ground and get, decked by 300-pound dudes, for 20-something games in a season just so I can have a chance at winning, a Heisman? I mean,
but you think about it that way. If he's a quarterback with a Heisman candidate, he could make a lot of money if he happens to get drafted into the NFL.
Yeah.
Like that's a cakewalk. If you can get into the NFL as a quarterback with and like a Heisman pedigree, you're set right there.
Also, too, would you rather play in front of 3,000 people
In
in
Oakland?
Oakland's single A baseball team or rookie team, or would you rather play in front of like 80,000 wild college football fans on a weekly basis? I mean, I know it's college football, but still.
It's college football's massive.
All
in the
of this
States.
is a fair assumption, but at the same time, what if he goes out there in the first game and, first snap, and he gets sacked and he has a compound fracture on his leg?
You're such a downer,
That's very, very possible.
Mhm.
It's very possible he will get injured during the next college season if he decides to play for the Sooners.
Yeah, you're
I'm not saying that they're bad or that their O-line is bad. It's just that there's so much risk
It's
involved
tough to turn
in
down
playing
that kind of
college
money,
football.
no matter what your other prospects are.
He could take a 95-mile-an-hour fastball between the eyes, too, and never play again. So there's always that risk. With every sport, there's always that risk
there's always
of
a risk.
you can never play again because of an injury.
I don't know.
But football's just
Either
higher
way,
risk.
I have to say I envy the guy because I'm only good at one sport, and it involves throwing rocks on an ice surface, and
That's not a
will
sport.
never make me $4.7 million.
That's also
you
not a
watch
sport.
yourself.
It's not.
All right. Well, I think that kind of ties up our draft conversation. I believe we're going to touch on all the pitchers on our 40-man roster who have pitched a game, a third of an inning, whatever it is this season. Kind of rate performance, talk about what their status is in terms of contract.
And we're not going to go big into
see them.
Jake Patrica, are we?
No, we're not
Okay,
going to talk
good.
about Jake
Yeah.
Patrica that much.
No, no.
We'll talk more about the guys like a John Axford or a Danny Barnes who've been around more this season, and kind of say, hey, do we want these guys back next year? Could they be trade candidates? Or if they're having a bad year, is it because they're bad or are they just getting unlucky? Because that happens in baseball. I'm looking at Mark Burley, very lucky. All right, so I think we're just gonna go alphabetical by last name, I believe. Hey, Patrick, you want to do that?
Yeah, I think we've got the list queued up there.
Yeah, we do.
We'll start with John Axford.
The Axeman, good old Canadian kid. I like this signing a lot. When we picked him up, I mean, the guy's making, I think it's like 1.8 million this year. Pretty good deal. I mean, he's been solid. I mean, I watched the Tigers game on Sunday when he came in and shut down 6 guys in a row.
Yeah.
2 innings. I mean, you can't ask more out of a guy who's kind of been knocked around a bit in recent years. Obviously broke into the league with Milwaukee and saved a ton of games over a 3-year stretch in the early of this decade. Good guy, good fastball. He's pitched in 25 games this year. He's pretty much right in line with his career averages. I'm kind of big into batted ball contact stats, and one thing I noticed is that he's generating about 8% more soft contact off batters than he has in his career. So I think that's kind of a function of him locating the ball better, where guys aren't able to square it up, and that's probably what's helped him kind of keep his numbers where they are. He's been probably arguably maybe our best reliever this year.
Yeah, agree to disagree on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty close between him and Sangwon Oh, but if you look too at the numbers, this is one of his better years, possibly his best
It
since
could
the
be a career
Milwaukee
year,
days when
yeah.
it comes to whip,
Yeah.
which is fairly significant. He's striking out less guys than he used to when he was younger with the Brewers.
Tends to happen, yeah.
But he plays a really good role in Toronto where he's a solid 7th, 8th inning kind of guy who can come in, shut down an inning,
Let's be realistic here,
the-
though. He's 35 years old,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we're not going to sign him to a big contract or anything. If we can get him for a 1-year deal
That's
next year,
similar to this year, yeah.
maybe. But I mean, unless he's putting up like gaudy numbers as a 35-year-old, you're not going to give him more than a 2-year, 3-year contract.
And
But
with that being said, too, you bring that up that it's a kind of guy who's that old, but he's got experience where teams looking to acquire a reliever to make their postseason push. If he's still pitching like this in a month from now, when the deadline's looming, that's a guy we could flip for a prospect or another a younger pitcher.
or he could be a Troy Hawkins and pitch when he's 42. You
never know.
You never know.
Yeah, it could happen.
Yeah, I see him as more of the former, more as the kind of guy that we can keep, kind of give him semi-protected innings, increase his value, and then just flip him. I can't see us bothering to re-sign a 35-year-old reliever when we already have some competent relievers in our system.
Fair.
The idea of signing him this year was that he would kind of serve that role that guys like LaTroy Hawkins have served in the past. But with the team not contending at all, I don't see why we would bother to hold on to him, especially if he has increased value at the deadline.
Yeah, you're right.
Next guy up here, Danny Barnes, whose ERA is a little high this year, 4.7. That's not that great considering he's only thrown 21 innings. I'm so on the fence about Danny Barnes because I just don't know what kind of pitcher he is. Like, sometimes he's a finesse pitcher, sometimes he can kind of overwhelm you a little bit. He just seems like such an on-the-fence pitcher. Like, nothing comes out at you when you think of Danny Barnes. He's like the generic player when you're playing MVP baseball. You know, when you go to create a player and it's like, everything is 70. That's Danny Barnes. Danny Barnes just doesn't stick out. And as a relief pitcher, you need to stick out in some kind of way.
I looked a little bit deeper too again, and he's walking about 5 guys per 9 innings, which
brutal.
Not great. Like, brutal. That's not good. And he's a 52% fly ball pitcher, which when you're pitching at home in the Rogers Center, we can talk about guys like Estrada who kind of get away with it at times, or has in the past. Leading up to now, but Danny Barnes is kind of I don't know. I don't think of Danny Barnes as that guy who can get away with fly balls. Like if you're giving up fly balls 50% of the time, you're going to give up your fair share of extra base hits and home runs. Yeah, and based like what Clayton said with the high ERA, I mean the guy, if you look at his FIP, which is his fielder independent pitching, it's more of an accurate assessment, and it's actually higher than his ERA. So he's actually been getting lucky to have a 4.7 ERA this year. So looking a bit deeper, I mean, the guy hasn't been great. So I'm on the fence if I'd even want to see him back. We got him team controlled through next year, so he's not even he's making the league minimum salary right now, which is a reason to keep him. He's not costing us a shit ton of money, which we can respect that. And then after that, once he's arbitration eligible, he hasn't pitched well enough in his career to make a ton of money. So he's looking to be one of those guys who might be just that fringe reliever that a team will sign during or right before spring training, just to fill out their roster. So I mean, nothing remarkable with Danny Barnes.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I like the fact that he is not going to be a free agent until 2023, which means we have tons of control. But have you guys ever heard the term for a player who is good, really good in AAA, but not quite good enough in MLB, and they call him like 4A. A quadruple A player, something like that? Yeah. That's kind of what Danny Barnes is to me, is like he's the quintessential quadruple A pitcher. Yeah, not quite good enough to be effective in MLB, but when it comes to AAA, he would be, as close as you can get to being a star in the minor leagues as far as ability goes. True. But there is nothing that really sticks out except for, the negative stats on the stat line.
Yeah, it's something that I'm sure he doesn't want to stick out, but it has.
Well, just the fact that he's giving up 5 walks per 9 innings and over 2 home runs every 9 innings.
Well, and you think of a reliever who comes in, they come in with guys on base. You don't want him walking anyone else. Exactly. He's supposed to be in there to strand runners and get out of jams. And if he's creating more work for himself, yikes.
Yeah, he was much better last year. I mean, it's still, I hate saying this, but early. It's still, quote, early when it comes to his career and the projections for the season, that he could still turn it around theoretically. Yeah. When it comes to his ERA and FIP and all those other numbers.
He could go on one of those streaks where we've seen guys come and throw 30 straight scoreless appearances, and his ERA could drop to 2 something, and it could happen. With relievers, their numbers fluctuate so quickly because they're only in there for an inning or less in some cases. So.
Yeah, but ultimately, I think we're all on the same page where we have relatively little faith in what Danny Barnes can bring to the team. Mm-hmm. And that's totally fine. There's a bunch of other competent arms in the system, so he could be serviceable when it comes injury time. But once 2023 hits, I don't see us hanging on to him. I think he'll be done by then.
Danny Barnes will not be on the team by 2023. He will not be on the team on 2019, guys. Come on,
2020 at the very least. He's
Danny Barnes.
Once he's out of team control, we don't need him anymore.
Joe Biagini,
Patrick's favorite guy, Jumbo Joe.
Oh,
he loves that he's a starter now. He doesn't love it.
He had a lot of
Oh,
promise
man.
early
I love
in his
that
Blue Jays
sigh
career.
there, Patrick. That was great.
He had a lot of promise in the early part of his Jays career. A big guy who can chuck gas, and there's a lot of movement on his fast stuff too.
And he's a likable dude.
Oh, very likable, weirdo, but
Oh, yeah.
very, very likable. The thing is, he hasn't gotten better. You need to get better if you're going to be a starting pitcher. You cannot stay on the same level. You need to improve, and I haven't seen improvement from him.
Not at all.
No, he's so much worse this year than he was last year, and last year was a friggin' disaster. So I don't know what to say about Joe Biagini that I haven't already said, in private and to myself every night before I go to bed.
Oof.
I just don't want to see him starting games anymore.
Dear diary.
At all.
Today, Joe Biagini started a game. He was terrible.
I wanted to
Patrick.
hang myself. God, I just don't like it when I don't trust him with the ball anymore, and that's a big thing. I mean, sure,
big
Aaron
trust.
Sanchez and Stroman and Marco Estrada. I mean, we'll talk about him soon but you kind of trust them with the ball because you can be like, you know what to do. You can have great games. Everyone's gonna have a bad game once in a while, and everyone goes through bad stretches. But you still trust them with the ball.
Yeah.
I don't trust Joe
We
Biagini
haven't
with the
seen a
ball
great
anymore.
game from Joe Biagini.
No,
as a
he's
starter.
turning into another Romero where you don't trust him.
It's kind of the thing where I believe that they're done with him as a starter now. He's been in the bullpen the last couple of weeks. I liked him in the bullpen in our last ALCS run there in 2016. He was great in the pen. Pitched the eighth inning role for us a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And that was huge. He's a guy that we've seen good numbers from. He's eligible for arbitration this offseason, but based on his current numbers, he's not going to get paid that much.
No.
So he's a guy that we can re-sign on a two-way deal, so at least we can option him to the minors if we need to.
Exactly.
Yep.
And he's young enough, and as a Rule 5 pick that we got from the Giants a couple of years ago, I mean, we've got more than we could have really hoped for.
Mm-hmm. He's done his job.
He's
for
done
the
his job adequately as a reliever.
Mm-hmm. Now it's time to go.
Now it's time probably to either move on or hope that he can find his game the next little while in the pen and right the ship.
Yeah. Next guy coming up here, I think we can do this one quickly and we can all agree that Tyler Clippard has got to frig off.
Ugh. Tyler Clippard's one of those guys where I look at him and he just doesn't. He's not physically imposing. He just looks like that lanky kid on the playground. Looks like me when I'm on the playground with like a pair of cool ass sunglasses on, throwing gas and giving up a lot of home runs like I did in slow pitch this weekend. I was terrible on the mound. Nothing happening. He's not walking a ton of guys. He is walking a ton of guys again.
Stop trying to defend Tyler Clippard, man. Like, we can just say he's bad and we can move on.
He's doing a job right now that Roberto Osuna screwed over, and we got to give him a little bit of credit for at least stepping in and closing a few games for us.
No, we don't.
Clayton's just shaking his head at me right now.
He can't locate his pitches, and you can tell. Like, when he pitches, he's not aiming for anything. He's
just
missing his
throwing it
spots.
down the middle, yeah.
Russell Martin will just be livid at him because he's like, man, hit your
the
spot.
spots.
Like, you'll see, like, when you see Tyler Clippard pitch, watch Russell Martin or Luke Maile behind the
body
plate.
language is
They
not
will just sit
great.
there and just be like, man, here, because he can't hit his spots. Get rid of him.
Yeah, well, who else do we have?
Good point.
That's the problem, right?
One
That's why
more
we're having
thing when
this
it comes to
discussion.
Clippard. Early in the season, he had stuff, and then he just lost
You think
it.
he's out of gas and it's
And
only June?
And it's just been a very steady decline since then. I mean, he still has, a 0.5 wins above replacement.
Yeah, he's contributing, so he's adding some value. I mean, if you look at Fangraphs, they say he's got a 0 wins above average. Baseball Reference is a little bit different in their grading system, but either way, he's been barely a fringe player.
Yeah, like the thing is, I see him as another player who we can cultivate into having value at the deadline and then ship him off to who cares where.
Tyler Clippard's
And-
values in the past, though, and that's and teams do look at that when they're looking to add guys like I said earlier with Axford as a kind of a playoff bolstering roster move, where they'll look at the past and say, hey, this guy's saved games before. Let's bring him in just in case we need somebody. And they can always leave him off their roster if he doesn't fit in with their plans.
I'm really mad we've spent this much time talking on Tyler
Clayton's
freaking
livid.
Clippard.
Let's move on before Clayton has an aneurysm and talk about Marco Estrada, who is equally frustrating, if not more than Tyler Clippard.
I'm emotionally attached to Marco Estrada.
I like Marco a lot. He's got a
because
great name.
It's not like Tyler Clippard where he came in this year and whatever, he's a new guy. Marco Estrada was there 3 years ago and the Jays just started to get good again after 15 years of being
kept
horrible.
us alive in 2 playoff games.
Kept us alive. He pitched his ass off for us. Marco Estrada gave it 110% for the Jays, but he is, as my friends like to say, Strugs McGrugs right now, like just struggling.
Yeah.
It's tough to see. He's getting older, but you can definitely tell that his change-up command isn't there. And he definitely lost some zip on the ball.
He had that back injury last year. I think that probably sapped a lot of everything. I mean, he was carrying the team, quote unquote, for a few years.
But he's such a gem. That's the thing. He's a great guy in the clubhouse. He works hard, and he's going to give you everything you got. Again, a guy that you trust the ball with. If you give him the ball, you're going to trust him. But that trust is going a little out the window.
It's
hey, Patrick?
eroding a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a steady decline since his All-Star season. I love Estrada too. I remember watching those postseason games. I remember believing in him. I remember thinking to myself, this guy is our guy now and in the future. But this year, he has not been good. Like you said, his changeup, the deception in the delivery and all that, it's not there anymore. There's no speed anymore on the fastball. There's no, what's the term? Velocity, I guess.
Yeah.
Is
it's down.
Even though it's acceleration. But anyway, I digress. He just doesn't have the tools that he had in 2016, and I think it's time for us to very begrudgingly accept the fact that he can't be our number 3 starter anymore, and once this season passes, it'll be for the best that we go in a different direction.
Well, he is a free agent, so I mean,
it sucks.
It's really tough to either get some value out of him at the deadline. We've had so many guys that's like, hey, we could get something for them at the deadline. It seems like every guy we've talked about so far, we're always like, oh yeah, we could trade them if they're playing well enough. It's a lot of ifs. And with Estrada, the way he's pitched, I don't know of any team who'd be willing to take a chance on him to improve their team.
He'll be like a Francisco Liriano at the deadline. Remember when we got Liriano back in the day, and it was like, hey, he can be a fifth starter for a contender, and then maybe in the playoffs go to the bullpen. That's what I see Marco Estrada being.
Liriano's value though is that we got Teoscar Hernandez for him,
and also Francisco Liriano was a lefty.
Yeah,
and Marco
true.
Estrada's not. Lefties are very, very valuable.
That is true.
Let's move to Jaime Garcia here. Again, another new guy. I loved his first 2 starts. I thought his stuff was great, even though I don't think he won his first 2 starts.
No.
But I really enjoyed Jaime Garcia's first 2 starts. It looked like, another veteran presence in our starting rotation. And then he started to throw like Tyler Clippard, and that's where you lose me there.
Yeah, he got injured and come back, and he wasn't great against Detroit. We all know that.
Yeah.
I think he didn't even last out of the second inning.
No.
At times. He's getting hit. He's getting hit very hard this year. Like 40% of the balls the batters are hitting them against him have been hard contact. So I mean, that's not a recipe for success. If you're a starting pitcher, you want to give up a lot less than that. So I mean, I think Jaime Garcia's here to eat innings, and that's kind of why we signed him. There wasn't much left in the free agent pool by the time we decided, hey, we should probably sign a pitcher. Even though we knew we needed one going in. But I think he's kind of just that guy a la R.A. Dickey that's here to eat some innings ideally and just kind of bridge the gap this season.
Yeah, I don't think he has a future with the Jays either. Like we have a team option for 2019.
Yeah.
But it's the contract would be $10 million, and it's a $2 million buyout. Just buy him out.
Yeah.
I don't see him as being a part of the future of the organization at all. And again, another guy that we can try to flip for value, although at this point his value really couldn't be any lower.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, next guy up here. Again, we could
Sammy G.
Sammy G. How do you say his last name? Gaviglio?
Yeah, that's right.
Like it's not like a soft G or anything like that.
No.
I'm not gonna lie to you guys. Again, I like the Jays. I haven't really heard too much about this guy. I'm gonna let you guys take this one because
he started a couple of games. He looked actually really good as a starter. low walks, decent Ks. He's a ground ball guy. About the same numbers as Sanchez, about 50% of the time.
Is he another quadruple A kind of guy though?
So he's kind of young. He's only played in 21 big league games. He played some time last year.
Gotcha.
He's got 16 starts and 21 games. A fringe fifth starter with 4 potential if he plays out of his mind. I think that's really kind of the book on him. Too limited of a time really to draw conclusions.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Yeah.
I agree with that. It's early in his career. He's not arbitration eligible until 2021.
Which is good.
I see him as the kind of guy who can be our 5th starter while the team rebuilds the next season or two and just chew up innings.
He's got to stay in Buffalo.
Great. If he's great, great. If he's not, whatever.
Yeah. He's going to be kind of that guy who gets those spot starts on a doubleheader like we've been doing with Biagini, and then moves back to AAA, back and forth kind of deal.
Next guy up here, Blue Jays MVP so far this season, J Happ. Can't say enough good things about J Happ because, I mean, when you have pitchers on your team like Marcus Stroman, who's all over the social media, you have Aaron Sanchez doing his stupid WestJet commercials or whatever. You got these pitchers that are hogging the spotlight so much. No one really talks about J Happ, and all he does is throw gas and get wins. That's all J Happ does, and yet no one talks about him in our rotation.
I think the good thing about J Happ is you don't have to talk about him. He's there putting in his work. He's a quiet guy. He has that demeanor where he doesn't. I don't think Jay wants to be talked about, which is probably a good thing. I mean, he's kind of just going about his business.
I love that.
That's the kind of guy you want leading your rotation. I mean, the guy who shows people how it's done.
I just love his delivery. Like, it's just so smooth and fluid. It's Doc-esque, you know. Like,
yeah,
just there's
style.
not a wasted motion in his delivery.
It's very deliberate.
He's just, it seems like he's throwing a lot harder this year. He's getting a little up there in age, but he seems to be throwing harder and have more control. Again, I love J Happ this season. J Happ is the only reason why the Jays are somewhat kind of maybe-ish still in it.
He's making $12 million, free agent this year. I mean, sign him to a 2-year deal, maybe. Ish.
Yeah.
I don't think he'll sign a 1-year deal.
Depends the price.
I think he can get a 2-year deal somewhere.
Yeah.
Maybe a 3 if it's if it's front loaded. I mean, the guy's striking out 11 guys from 9 innings. He's traditionally been about 7, so he's striking out more guys. He's walking less, and he's getting the same amount of ground balls, 47% as he did last year.
Exactly.
So he's a measure of consistency, which I mean you have to respect about a guy who's playing on a team who's not going anywhere this season. He hasn't let the team's performance affect him, and I love that. I like the guy a lot.
He is kind of an island on his own right now because he's the only Jay who's exceeding expectations. And like I like him a lot on the roster, and I'd like to see him stick around. But I'm going to say this again: he's a guy who, at the deadline, if he's still overachieving, we can trade for value. He is 35 years old, which means he's definitely not going to be a starting pitcher by the time all of our young guns come up. Yeah. So do we keep him for the sake of having the team not look completely incompetent, or do we flip him, get some kind of draft pick or a solid prospect from a team like, say, Pittsburgh or Chicago or St. Louis, who might want to look to beef up their pitching rotation come July in order to kind of get over that hump and secure a wild card spot?
I think if the phone rings, you got to answer it if it involves J Happ, and if the offer is good, you take the money and you run with it. Don't look back.
And we'll talk about that a little bit at the end when we talk about if we should blow the Jays up or not. Let's get back to the bullpen. Aaron Loop. Yeah.
Okay.
Again, another on the fence kind of guy for me.
Yeah. See, people give Aaron Loop a lot of crap, and I mean I have in the past too. But when we started talking about doing this episode, I looked a lot into what he's done. I mean, the guy's been very, very, very consistent. Like, I always thought he'd get up a ton of home runs. He doesn't. He gives up less than half a home run per 9 innings, which is all you can ask. And he's a left-handed guy. He's got that crazy sidewinder delivery that I just love to see as well. Strikes out almost 9 guys per 9, walks less than 2.5. A decent ground ball guy. I mean, he's the kind of guy that, looking at those numbers alone, you say, why don't we have more Aaron Loops in our bullpen?
The thing is,
why can't we find more guys like that?
You look at his numbers, and yes, his numbers are great, but when he has his bad games, they are the biggest games.
They're
against Boston.
games,
They're against the Yankees. They're against Baltimore. They're against the teams we're chasing. So, yes, Aaron Loop's stats are good on paper, but it's just... he is not clutch. And that's the one thing about baseball is you look at people's numbers and you're like, man, how is this guy not in the All-Star game?
Yeah.
But it's just the clutch factor. And Aaron Loop just doesn't have that. I just don't see that clutch gene where he's coming out of the bullpen, he's going to get 3 outs. It's always like...
doesn't have ice in his veins like a Osuna who was closing games in the playoffs as a 21-year-old
We don't talk about Roberto Osuna anymore.
I want to talk about him, though.
Can't. He's a dick.
We are going to talk about him, though, unfortunately.
We'll touch very briefly on that, yeah.
Aaron Loop is a left-handed reliever. They don't grow on trees, so I kind of like the idea of keeping him around if we can afford him. I would not, blow a massive wad of cash on trying to keep him around for 2-3 years. But as far as left-handed relievers go, I like what he has. I don't like the fact that he is the opposite of clutch when we play divisional rivals. But at the same time, he is not ineffective this year, so I don't know. I say keep him for another year or two, see what happens. He's only 30.
Yeah.
The fact he's a lefty, I think, saves him.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
What was that?
The fact he's a lefty, I think, saves him a bit.
Absolutely, yeah. That's what I think, too.
Another lefty, Tim Meza. I mean, we can't really say too much about this guy. He's under team control for a while. He's another fly ball guy, but he gets a lot of strikeouts, gives out some dingers. But I mean, the sample size for him is pretty small in the big leagues.
Yeah.
So I don't really have anything to say about Tim Meza until we see 30, 40 games out of him.
Yeah, I don't want to chirp him because I don't really know too much about him.
Yeah, I don't know him personally, so I don't want to say anything bad about him.
It's early in his career. I think we can say that.
We can't really make judgments.
Too early to say here. Next guy up here is it Derek McGuire?
Deck McGuire?
Deck McGuire.
Yeah, Deck McGuire is a guy we've had in our farm system for it seems like forever now. I'm not sure how old is he, Clayton? Do you have his age up there?
Let me check his baseball reference here.
He's about to turn 29 in.
Is he that old already? My goodness. Okay, so yeah, I mean, for Deck McGuire, I mean, it's kind of a guy who's never pitched in the big leagues for a full season at 29.
Yeah.
How much time do we have left to waste on him?
None.
If he hasn't developed yet, why is he still around is kind of my opinion.
I don't know. I think I don't have any patience for him anymore.
He's just the roster filler?
Yeah, I don't even know why he's there. I'm not saying like he's a bad person. I'm just saying I don't see any value at the MLB level. I don't even know what he's doing in the minors.
He might be one of those guys who looks like a sexy prospect, 6'6", 220. Probably chucks really, really hard. So, like, you might be like, okay, this guy looks great in shorts and a T-shirt. But when it comes to the actual game, it might be one of those guys who, like, yeah, he hasn't performed yet. We got to get rid of him. But he's just a good-looking prospect where you're like, you know what? Let's take a chance on him for another year. But I agree. His whip is 1.6 this year. Like, ugh.
Yeah, not great.
Next guy up here, we got after Deck. Oh, we got
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
The final boss.
I never know how to say his first name. Is it Sangwon?
Sangwon.
Sangwon. Oh, you got the H in there.
Yeah.
Hohan. Okay, gotcha.
Oh, the final boss. It's such a sweet nickname. I mean, he came over from the Asian leagues from Japan and looked real good in St. Louis when he came over. And then this last couple of years, he's kind of just been a very, very, very average reliever where he's not really added much value. He's making $1.8 million this year. He's got a $2.5 million team option with a $200,000 buyout next year. So I mean, the price tag on him isn't too much. If he's average the rest of the season, we might pick up that option just to keep a guy around who can throw some gas and has that late inning experience. I mean, he's striking out a ton of guys still, almost 10 per 9. And like looking into his advanced stats, as I like to do, they kind of show that he's been getting better or worse luck than he should. His numbers on paper look like he should be performing better than he is, so he's kind of just getting the crap end of the stick when it comes to balls finding holes and that kind of thing. So I mean, over the course of the season, we might see this guy go lights out for a while, just as the baseball always does. It always evens out.
At this point, I'll take any bullpen pitcher that isn't pitching horrible baseball.
Yeah,
and that's the thing with
him.
O. He's not pitching horribly. He's doing his job.
Yeah.
So anyone who's doing his job has a spot in the Blue Jays bullpen right now because everyone's struggling. So anyone who's half decent, you got to keep, and that's what O's been doing right now. So
you mentioned like Aaron Loop's bad games are bad games. O has the same thing. He'll come in for 3 straight games and look great, and then he'll come out and give up 4 runs and a couple home runs back to back. What do you think, Patrick?
I'd like for us to keep him around. Keep in mind, though, he's going to be turning 36 next month.
These Asian guys are always deceiving because they come over here later.
Yeah, he's no spring chicken. We do have an arbitration year, and then I think he's a free agent in 2022, so we could probably squeeze another season and a bit out of him.
Yeah.
But like Clayton said, he's doing his job. He might as well stick around.
Okay, this next guy... Is it Aaron Sanchez?
Should we keep Osuna for last? Maybe.
I was thinking thinking, and I'll edit this. I was thinking Stroman last, because like, do we keep Stroman next? Do we keep Stroman? Is he going to be our franchise guy, or do we get rid of him?
Okay, that's a good question.
We'll save that for late. We'll save that for last. Let's talk about Roberto Osuna right now.
Yeah.
Is it cool if I swear?
Yeah.
Fuck this guy.
Yep.
Yeah, see,
I'm sorry, but like he beat up his girlfriend.
I'm in the same boat as you. I got no patience for people who, for one, are hit women. I got no patience for that, and let alone a guy who's there's kind of been some rumors circling on him. Maybe this isn't the first time it's happened, that the Blue Jays may have known about some past issues in Mexico in the summer.
Yeah,
or the fall and the winter. Sorry, I always think differently with sports. So I mean, Roberto Osuna, as far as I'm concerned, he's probably done.
I'd say so too.
With the Jays at the very least, and potentially his career maybe over in the States in the major leagues, he might go pitch somewhere else, or they'll take him, and maybe Japan or like Korea, or maybe he'll just go back and pitch in the Mexican League.
Well, that's a shame because he was great.
Such a good guy, or not a good guy,
not
a good pitcher. Not a good guy,
not
good
a
pitcher.
good guy.
Good pitcher who's just kind of threw it all away because he had some issues. So I mean, that's really all there is to say about him. I mean, we can talk all we want about how good he's been in playoff games and just over the course of his young career, but unfortunately, you just get those guys who'll just throw it all away.
Agreed.
Yeah, I mean, early in the season, he broke the record for fastest player to get to 100 saves, or the youngest player, whatever it is.
Yeah, youngest.
And like a month and a half later, Jays fans are we've all unanimously agreed that if he is guilty of what we think he may be guilty of, then he definitely shouldn't be back in a Jays uniform.
It was kind of funny.
Totally on board with that.
When we were talking earlier, you asked if you had forgotten any pitchers, and I said Roberto Osuna is not on the list, just because we've kind of just moved on at this point.
He's done.
Yeah.
Let's move on.
It's kind of a shame too.
Yeah, it is a huge shame. Again, he was perfect, and he was a fan favorite.
Yeah.
Perfect closer. He's going to be our closer for a long time by the looks of it. Didn't work out because he's a douche. Aaron Sanchez. This is a touchy subject.
I love Aaron so much.
First of all, his commercials are stupid, and they're the worst Blue Jays commercials ever.
They're not great.
Remember the Troy Gloss commercial where he goes and he hits that dinger with the piñata and then runs around? It's like, I miss those Jays commercials.
Those were fun. Even
though I hated AJ Burnett. Those Blue Jays commercials for AJ Burnett were great.
I didn't like AJ Burnett back then, but I mean, the guy grew on me as time went on.
Aaron Sanchez's commercials are horrible. I know that has nothing to do with his performance or anything
like that.
I mean,
horrible commercials, mediocre performance in the field. Maybe it is
finger
connected.
sucks.
I mean, he looked real good against Detroit this weekend. 6 innings, only give up a couple of runs. I mean, it was kind of, for me, it was kind of a turning point, potentially, hopefully a turning point for Sanchez. I think he still walked 4 guys. But the problem with Aaron is that he gets so much movement on his two-seam fastball that I've watched, and as an umpire, I hate to rag on umpires, but there have been a ton of calls where Aaron Sanchez is either coming back on the outside corner or cutting in off the inside that they just missed. And he works the low end of the zone. He's a ground ball guy, a big-time ground ball guy. And I feel like he's been getting kind of the short end of the umpire stick this season, where they've just been missing some calls. But at the same time, I mean, with that much movement, you're going to walk some guys. I still feel like Aaron Sanchez is going to be the ace of this team.
I mean, imagine what he could do if he had a competent pitching coach who could just help him with his mechanics, his delivery,
Yeah.
as well as getting that location back.
I
Because
do think
he's
Pete Walker's not doing him justice.
he's walking way too many guys, just way too many.
And we get to this common theme where you mentioned he's walking too many guys, and that's kind of the thing that a lot of our pitchers are struggling, especially our starters are struggling with this year. Like you saw Stroman before he went down with injury, he was walking a ton of guys. Hap's still walking a ton of guys too. He's pitching well enough to get out of those jams when he gets the balls in play, but we're running into some control issues across the roster, and sooner or later
that's a telling thing, isn't it? Like that's a sign of a bigger issue
of an approach,
right?
Approach thing that these guys are being taught that they're not attacking the zone as much as they should be. Like major league pitchers should be able to throw strikes. You can't tell me that a guy who, like an Aaron Sanchez or like a Marcus Stroman, can't throw strikes when they've been highly touted prospects and starters for a couple of years now.
Josh Towers made millions of dollars by not throwing strikes.
You're right. Those times were different, and we still sucked then anyway. So it looked a little bit different. We weren't coming off a couple of good years before we fell into mediocrity again. I just feel like Aaron Sanchez is a guy who he's making $2.7 million this year. He's eligible for arbitration year 2. He'll make something similar next year. Barring an incredible finish to this season, he won't make much more money than he is right now. He's a guy that we can still keep around for a couple of more years on team control, essentially. So, I mean, I don't see why we would do anything crazy with Sanchez. He's a young enough guy that we don't have to say, hey, like, it's not like a Deck McGuire. Aaron Sanchez isn't 29.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, the time for Sanchez to develop is still now. He had that great 2016 where he was top 5 in Cy Young voting, led the league in ERA. Yep. And then obviously the finger thing last year was just a huge Debbie Downer. But hopefully he's moved past that. And so far, I mean, he hasn't had any issues with it this season. He hasn't missed a start yet. So, I mean, I'm looking at Aaron Sanchez as the guy who, like a Marcus Stroman, is hopefully a fixture of this team for at least the next handful of years, or could be, is in the talk. Because we've got these kids coming up who are going to be here next year, if not sooner, who are going to be a big part of this team for the next 5-10 years, and hopefully these guys are right in there with them. Yeah, that's all I got there. I mean, Aaron Sanchez it's frustrating to see him struggle, but at the same time, I still believe he's going to be a guy who figures it out.
Here's the thing, though. Like I agree. I would like for Sanchez to be our ace now and in the future. But if there was an opportunity, like let's say you're Shapiro and there's an opportunity to flip him for another pitching prospect, like say Alex Reyes, and kind of give the team a soft reset as far as getting somebody a bit younger with a bit less experience but highly touted as a prospect, would you do it?
For Alex Reyes, I would highly consider it. I mean, the Cardinals are going to demand a king's ransom for Alex Reyes, because he's almost ready now to be a very good major league starter. So he's not going to come cheap. If the price is Aaron Sanchez, I don't know. It's tough to give up on a guy who we saw a complete season from only a couple of years ago before injuries kind of wrecked him last year. And it wasn't even like it was a pitching injury, like a muscle thing. It was a stupid blister. And I think that's what was the most frustrating thing for fans, is just watching a guy say, hey, we understand if you had to have Tommy John surgery, but he had a blister on his finger and he couldn't pitch.
I'd trade him.
Yeah?
I'm just saying I'd trade him. Get him at his most value. I don't see Aaron Sanchez being the guy on this team. I don't see it out of him. I mean, I did see it in 2016. If we were talking 2 years ago, I would never say trade him ever. He was indispensable in the Jays. I don't know. A gut feeling tells me he's a good piece to move. If we're thinking about blowing up, he's the first guy that's got to go.
You bring up a good point. I mean, I feel like as Jays fans, especially, we tend to look at what guys have done in the past.
Yeah.
Instead of more of a what have you done for me lately kind of approach.
That's good. Yeah, let's skip Luis Santos here because it's Luis Santos. Tepera, I think we can all agree that Ryan Tepera is another Danny Barnes kind of guy.
Yeah, he's 30 years old again too.
I really want to talk about Stromes.
Yeah, I do too. Let's talk about Marcus.
Okay.
I think Marcus, I didn't think he was going to be out for as long as he has been so far this year.
He's not even throwing yet.
It was supposed to be a 10-day DL thing, and yet he's still just hanging out in his Instagram, posting selfies from his big house. I love Marcus Stroman. I love that he went to number 6 for the 6. I loved him and David Price together, how amped up he got. I loved how he came back from a torn ACL. I love all that about him. But he's got to start proving it on the mound. It's awesome that the fans love him. It is awesome that, he's a fan favorite and that he loves Toronto. He's a little too inconsistent on the mound. When he's on. He's one of the best pitchers in baseball.
Yeah, I mean, the guy's...
His consistency's been a little bit of an issue, though.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, the guy's kind of frustrating. He's a bit of a loudmouth when it comes to the Twitterverse. The whole Ryan Goins thing, where hashtag communication.
Yeah.
Like the Blue Jays owe him anything when they're going to let Ryan Goins go. It's not
exactly.
Like, hey, if it was somebody else like Josh Donaldson, like just, okay, we're still let Josh Donaldson walk away. Then, I mean, yeah, then I'd be probably mad too. But it's Ryan Goins, and the guy wasn't worth anything. Yeah, I mean, Stroman's making $6.5 million this year, which seems like a waste of money right now with the way he pitched prior. I mean, a 7.71 ERA. I will point out that his career ERA is 3.87, and his FIP this season, if he was getting the same luck as everybody else, is 3.98, which is barely above his career ERA. So I mean, the guy, he had 7 starts. It's tough to gauge a starting pitcher on 7 starts. Maybe when he gets to 15, if he comes back soon, then we talk about it. I mean, 60% ground balls still. I mean, that's elite in the big leagues. If you can get over 55% ground balls, you're doing very, very well.
If we blow up the team, though, we're going to need a guy in the field that's going to be the face of the team, and we're going to need a pitcher that's going to be the face of the team.
Marcus Stroman.
You need to have that Marcus Stroman to keep the fans coming back.
Agreed.
I mean, Rogers Center doesn't do well selling during the season anyways when the Jays aren't in it.
Yeah.
So if we do blow it up and the Jays suck, we're going to need some butts in the seats. And I know that's bad style for baseball teams to think like that, because you want to put the best product on the field, but you need a guy like Marcus Stroman that's going to get the kids and the family to the ballpark, and then you obviously got Vladimir Guerrero Jr. So you got your two kind of faces of the franchise there. I just don't think you can move Stromes right now.
And Patrick, I got something fun for you that you'll like. 4.33 walks per 9 innings. How do you like that?
I don't like that at all.
No one likes that. Another one of your issues with Mr.
Like,
Pete Walker.
I think. Well, yeah, I think I'm actually in complete opposition to what you guys are saying about Stroman, in that I think he should just be dealt. It's a combination of things. Number one, I cannot stand his social media presence. I think it is distracting, and all this hype that was bouncing around about height doesn't measure heart and all this nonsense with the supposed feud between Sanchez and Stroman last year, and then on top of that, he's performed horribly this year. Now he's injured. He's got, quote, shoulder fatigue.
Hey, it sounds like Josh Johnson's dead arm.
Complaining about how his friends are going elsewhere or not getting signed or whatever. I feel like he's turning into a head case.
Yeah.
And he's getting in his own way of being successful. And as great as his previous accomplishments are with the Jays, he's had a great career thus far. I think he really could use a fresh start, and now would be a really good time for him to get a fresh start somewhere else.
Mm.
Isn't it funny, though, how his social media was not a big factor 2 or 3 years ago, and he was the same guy, still the HDMH guy, whatever, but he was pitching great.
Yeah.
So if you pitch great, I don't think you can kind of be a bit of an idiot on social media. Not an idiot, but you can be out there on social media, because if you're pitching great, who cares? But it's awesome to see that, hey, if you're not pitching awesome and you're not doing your job, we're not going to put up with your shit.
In 2018, fans will pick on anything they can. Yeah. It's tough. I mean, I unfollowed him on every social media platform that I participate in, because I just don't want to see it. It definitely did taint my opinion of the guy a little bit, but then at the same time, like I thought to myself, you know what, it shouldn't impact the way I feel about him as a baseball player. So I just eliminated that bias or that possibility from my daily life. I mean, I still love Stroman because of the ground ball numbers, and his batted ball stats are really good. I mean, I love to see him come back this year. He's come back from injuries before, obviously, like you said, the ACL thing, MCL, ACL, whatever it was. He came back way faster than he should have. He should have been out a year, and he came back in like 6 months and pitched well for us in a playoff scenario. So, I mean, the guy's definitely a big game performer. He loves the spotlight. And you can't have too many of those guys on your team who aren't afraid to go out there and say, hey, this is a must-win game. It's do or die. We got the Yankees coming to town. We got to win this game. And Stroman's like, I want the ball.
That's what I like about Strome's big-time pitcher. So by the sounds of it, we all think that the Jays should blow it up, correct?
Yeah. Especially on the... just talking about pitchers, we haven't even touched hitters yet. We won't get to that today. And I feel like without even getting there, I mean, we've talked about, I think, over half the guys we said, hey, if we can get some value from him, why not?
So here's a scenario. You are Ross Atkins. You're blowing the team up. What do you do? Let's start with Patrick. Like, how do you blow up the team? What's your first couple moves? What do you try to get in return? Just, you're Ross Atkins. What do you do?
Okay, well, let's say it's July and everybody has performed, slightly above expectations as of this moment, but like probably just not having a great season. Yeah. I don't see John Axford or Tyler Clippard or Sangwon Oh really being a part of the distant future of the team. If they're overachieving, definitely trade them. When it comes to the starters, I would definitely look at trying to get value for Estrada because I don't see us re-signing him. Possibly the same with Happ, especially if he continues to overachieve. I just like the idea of just detonating what we have, getting maximum value, finding some other inning-eating pitchers out there, possibly in the NL Central, and just flip them for as many prospects as we can, and maybe start to pair these guys up with guys we are not going to be re-signing in the infield or outfield, like Josh Donaldson, and trying to get maximum value. Hopefully try to restock the cupboard and find, some young talented pitchers who are just on the cusp of breaking out in MLB and bringing them in.
For sure.
That would be my approach.
Yeah, I'm disappointed in you, Patrick. You didn't use your Pete Walker line that you keep saying to me in our Skype chats.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, okay, Pete Walker needs to be fired into the sun. I think it's time. It's time for a total facelift of the pitching staff, and I think that starts at the tippy top with the coach. Yeah. And I think it's just time for a culture change. Whatever he has been doing, it's not working anymore.
See, I'm with you there. Yeah, I feel like we should keep John.
They lost their location. Look, if you look at it, top to bottom, they're walking more players. They're striking out less. They're giving up more like medium and hard contact hits. They're just getting the snot hit out of them all over the ballpark. It's time for a culture change. It doesn't mean we have to get rid of Gibby. It doesn't mean we have to get rid of every single coach, but there's clearly pitching is a problematic area, and a lot of the guys who were supposed to be the future on this team, like Stroman, are struggling tremendously, and I think it's because they just don't have a competent coach who can guide them towards fixing the location problem that they have.
True. Yeah, so, if I've got a wish list of guys that I want to see traded, I think it starts with Jaime Garcia. I mean, the guy, we might be able to get something from him, but I don't think we will. John Axford's on there for sure. Love that he's Canadian. He's been pitching super, super well for us so far this season. And then obviously, like you said, too, Clippard and O. I think O is more valuable out of those two guys just based on his pedigree as a hard fastball hitter. Clippard doesn't have the velocity anymore, the acceleration that O has. So I think he's more valuable. And kind of one of those fringe guys who's been good this year. I mean, Aaron Loop, we could trade him if the price is right. But again, we do have a pretty good deal for him there as well. So I'm not eager to just say trade everybody at the expense of getting good deals. But if it comes down to it in July and it looks like we're tracking to be close to 10 games under 500, that's out of the race. Like, you're not coming back from 10 games under 500 in a wild card race at that point, and you might be 4th or 5th in your division if the Orioles ever figure anything out, which they probably won't. But at the same time, it is true that we do need to trade probably 3-4 guys out of this bullpen and maybe starting rotation to get something that will help us when our kids come up next year.
Your guys' blow-up plans are way too boring. You guys are talking, we need to blow it up, we need to blow it up. Let's move 3 bullpen guys.
Yeah.
Are you fucking kidding me? No! Are you okay, here's the thing, we do need a complete culture change. We need
a huge issue.
We need an era change because this era of Blue Jay baseball is over. The Josh Donaldson era, the Edwin era, the Aaron Sanchez era, I think it's all done. And what I think we should do is Sanchez, you got to trade him. If the market is there for J-Happ, you got to trade him, but only if you can get a lot in return for J-Happ. I still think J-Happ's our MVP.
Yeah.
Move a bunch of bullpen guys. You move Josh. You move some other pieces. Because here's the thing. Our cupboard is full. Our minor league system is pretty good with the exception of pitching.
Yeah.
So I think what we do is we try to build what Cleveland did and what New York has, and we try to get a hell of a bullpen. Because now that Roberto Osuna is gone, we need bullpen help. And you look at teams like Cleveland, you look at teams like New York, you look at playoff baseball teams, they have 4 guys in their bullpen that are shutdown guys.
Cleveland's got Andrew Miller. That's
exactly
all they need.
So you need that one bullpen guy. I'd try to get as many solid bullpen guys as possible and start from the bullpen. It's kind of like in football where you build a good offensive line. It's not the sexy move. It's not the move that fans want to see, but it is absolutely necessary to get a good line.
And
I
we'll
think
talk
that's what
about
the Jays need
prospects
to do.
eventually too. I mean, we do have Sean Reed Foley, who's been promoted to AAA this season, and we have Nate Pearson, who's I think is a good pitcher as well.
I just think
there are some guys there, but not enough.
Our farm system is, especially on the bats, our farm system it's stocked. So we don't need to trade guys for 4 unknown prospects and hope they get better. We already have our team for the next while. Our prospects are great. So we need that bullpen.
So
if we can have a solid bullpen and our prospects keep getting better and better, we're great.
See, and I'm kind of from the aspect that bullpen arms are pretty easy to come by. You can get a lot of mediocre bullpen guys.
But I'm talking we need an Andrew Miller guy. So package like an Aaron Sanchez and an Aaron Loop for a solid go-to top 5 bullpen guy.
It's tough to predict those bullpen guys though, because Andrew Miller was at one point supposed to be a starting pitcher.
True.
And so was Roberto Osuna, if we talk about him as well. So, I mean, there's guys that who just have good stuff that end up converting that may not have started there. I mean, I still believe that you go out and you build a rotation. So a guy like Patrick brought up with Alex Reyes in St. Louis, who has been rumored to be interested in Donaldson for the last year and a half now since the trade rumors have come up. So, I mean, that might be a kind of guy where maybe you have to send a Sanchez and a Donaldson to get Alex Reyes, and maybe you do it.
I'd say so.
You might have to at this point in the season. I mean, to get any value for Josh Donaldson, and if Aaron Sanchez can't figure it out again like he did a couple of years ago, then let's get some value for him while the memories are still fresh, and let's move on.
I just have a really good feeling about Alex Reyes, and I think that the Jays should just throw whatever they have to minus our untouchables in the farm system at St. Louis to get Alex Reyes on this team, whatever it takes.
Yeah, so with that being said, I think we've covered all of the guys we wanted to talk about today. Next time we'll cover all of the batters who have contributed or not contributed this season on our roster. Until then, from Justin, Clayton, and Patrick, we'll sign off from episode 1 of Bat Flips and Maple Dips.